I always believed life had a rhythm, a steady, predictable beat that carried you along day after day. I woke up that morning like any other, sunlight spilling across the floor of my apartment, the city buzzing faintly outside my window. I had a plan for the day, a quick meeting at work, lunch with Maya, and maybe a walk later if the evening was clear. Nothing about that day hinted at the storm that was quietly building, waiting to crash into my life and leave it unrecognizable. Maya had been my fiancée for nearly a year. People called us perfect for each other, and for a long time, I had believed them. She was charming, funny, beautiful, but most importantly, she seemed to understand me in a way no one else ever had, or so I thought. That morning, we exchanged messages like usual. Morning, love. Can't wait to see you later. Her words made me smile, just like they always did. But there was something in her tones, something I couldn't quite place. A hesitation. Or maybe I was reading too much into nothing. After all, I was always prone to overthink. I left for work, carrying that little seed of unease in my chest. It didn't take long for my day to feel off. Small things. A missed call from Maya. A text that seemed unusually curt. Nothing catastrophic, just the tiny cracks that I chose to ignore. By the time I finished my meeting, I was exhausted. I decided to surprise Maya with lunch at her office. I imagined her smile, that spark in her eyes when she saw me. It should have been a normal, happy moment. When I arrived, the office was quieter than usual. Her assistant, someone I had known for a while, greeted me politely but nervously. "Maya isn't here?" I asked, trying to hide the flicker of worry. "She went out for a quick meeting," the assistant said. "She mentioned it was urgent." She didn't say where. I felt a strange twist in my stomach but pushed it aside. Work emergencies happen. Maybe I was just being paranoid. After lunch, I returned home, expecting to relax before Maya came over. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty. I tried to distract myself with a show, scrolling through messages, checking my phone obsessively. But deep down, I had a gnawing feeling that today was different. Something was off, though I didn't know what. Then my father called Rashid. He rarely called me just to chat. He had a habit of calling when he wanted something or when something serious had happened. "Arav, can you come over? I need to talk to you about something important." "Sure, Dad. Everything okay?" I asked, trying to sound casual, but my heartbeat betrayed me. "There's something at home." "Just come," he said, his tone clipped, final. I didn't argue. Something in his voice made it impossible. I grabbed my keys and left, unaware that stepping into my father's house that evening would shatter every illusion I had ever held about the people I loved most. The drive felt unusually long. Every red light, every honk, every passing car seemed to stretch the seconds painfully. I tried to focus on breathing, on staying calm, but my mind raced what could be so urgent that he didn't even give me details. When I pulled into the driveway, the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. The front door was slightly ajar, a small detail that I barely noticed at first. Then I heard it. Laughter. Soft, familiar. Unmistakably Maya's laughter. And not alone. There was another voice of man's, deep, controlled, commanding. My heart stopped. I stepped inside cautiously. The laughter grew louder, turning into conversation. My pulse quickened, each step heavier than the last. I didn't want to believe it. I tried to reason with myself. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Maybe it's someone else. But as I turned the corner into the living room, my entire world collapsed. There they were. Maya, my fiancée, sitting close to my father, her hand brushing against his in a way that made my chest tighten. The look in her eyes wasn't surprise, it was complicity. She saw me, but not the way a frightened person would. No, she saw me with something else. Triumph, guilt. I couldn't tell. I froze. Words escaped me. My mind scrambled for explanations, for anything that could make sense of this nightmare. But there was none. And in that moment, the reality hit me with full force. My fiancé and my father, together. The twist that broke my heart had arrived. I couldn't move. My feet felt like they were glued to the floor, my chest tightening with every second that passed. Maya and my father didn't even flinch at my presence, as if my world had been erased and replaced with some cruel performance just for me. For a moment, I thought maybe I was seeing things. Maybe the shock had blurred my vision, but the laughter, the warmth of their closeness was undeniable. The hand she hadn't withdrawn, the subtle leaning in towards Hemet, All screamed betrayal. Bashir or of Maya said softly, finally breaking the silence. But it wasn't her usual gentle tone. It was calculated, controlled. She wasn't caught off guard. She was waiting, Dad. My voice was barely a whisper, cracked and shaky. What? What is this? Rashid leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers, eyes cold and unreadable. Sit down, Arav, he said, like a teacher calling a student to the principal's office. His calmness was infuriating. We need to talk. I wanted to scream. I wanted to run. My mind was screaming all at once, fighting the urge to either explode in anger or collapse in despair. I chose neither. I sat down, unwilling, forced by some compulsion to hear what they would say. Maya's gaze didn't leave mine. Arav, I can explain, she started, but her words rang hollow. Her eyes betrayed her. There was no remorse, only a faint hint of anticipation, as if she was curious to see how I would react. I swallowed hard, trying to steady myself. Explain. Explain what? That you've been with him? My voice rose, more in disbelief than in anger. I couldn't believe the words leaving my mouth. They felt too heavy, like a weight I'd never encountered before. Rashid's lips tightened. It's not what you think, he said calmly. But you need to understand things aren't as simple as you imagine. Not as simple. My mind screamed. What could possibly make this simple? The betrayal I felt wasn't just emotional, it was bone deep, cutting through every layer of trust I had built over years. I looked at Maya, not as simple. Dad, you've destroyed everything. Everything I believed in gone. My voice cracked, a mix of rage and heartbreak. How could you? Her eyes softened for a second, but it was fleeting. It wasn't supposed to happen like this, she whispered. But the sincerity was absent, replaced by the faint trace of scheming I had never seen before. I stood abruptly, pacing the room. You've both lied to me. Every single day. Every smile, every word, every promise. All lies. Rashid's voice was sharp now. Bashir, Arav, calm down. You don't understand the circumstances. There's more going on here than you realize. More going on? I scoffed bitterly. You mean more lies? More betrayal? Because that's all I see. Maya got up, stepping closer. Please, just listen. I interrupted, my voice low and trembling. I don't want to hear excuses. I don't want to hear lies. I need time. Time. I needed it to think. Time to breathe. Time to figure out how my world, so carefully built, had crumbled in an instant. I walked out of the room, out of the house, the weight of the betrayal pressing down on me like a physical force. My mind was a storm of questions. Why? How long? Were the smiles, the laughter, all just an act? When I finally got into my car, I couldn't even start the engine. I sat there, staring blankly at the steering wheel, trying to process what I had just seen. My father, the man I trusted more than anyone in the world, had betrayed me, and Maya, my fiancée, the person I had vowed to spend my life with, had chosen him over me. The shock was suffocating. My hands shook. My chest burned. Every memory I had of trust, of love, of family, it felt like it had been rewritten in a cruel, unrecognizable language. And yet, deep beneath the pain and anger, a seed began to grow, a quiet, cold determination. If they thought I would crumble, that I would disappear quietly into heartbreak, they were wrong. I didn't know what I would do yet. I didn't know how, but one thing was clear: I would not let this betrayal go unanswered. For now, I drove aimlessly, the city lights blurring past me as my mind spun. Questions circled endlessly, answers nowhere in sight. And somewhere, deep in the shadows of my thoughts, the first sparks of a plan of revenge began to ignite. I couldn't sleep that night. The apartment felt suffocating, each shadow a reminder of what I had seen. I kept replaying their laughter, the ease with which they had sat together, pretending nothing was wrong. My mind refused to stop, circling over every possible explanation, dismissing them all as impossible. By morning, I had made a decision. I needed to know the truth. Not just what I had witnessed, but everything they had hidden from me. Maya's smiles, my father's reassurances. The casual conversations that now seemed laced with secrets, it was all part of something I didn't yet understand. I reached out to Sana, my closest friend and confidant, someone who had always seen through lies. Her voice on the phone was calm, comforting. Bashir, you're not alone in this. Her words steadied me. I needed someone rational, someone I could trust to help me navigate the storm. We agreed to meet at a quiet cafe, away from the prying eyes of the city. As I waited, I realized just how much I had ignored over the past months. The little inconsistencies, the times Maya had been busy with vague excuses, my father's sudden late-night calls that he claimed were work-related, were they signs all along? Had I been blind, or had I just refused to see? When Sana arrived, I barely needed to explain. She already knew something was wrong the moment she saw my face. "Show me everything you have," she said firmly, pulling out a notebook to take notes. I recounted the entire scene, every detail, every nuance. How Maya didn't flinch, how my father had remained unnervingly calm, how their interactions had betrayed something far deeper than a single mistake. Sana listened quietly, her brow furrowing with each passing moment. "They planned this," she finally said. "It wasn't a moment of weakness. Someone doesn't behave like that if it's spontaneous. There's more here than you know." Her words cut through me like ice. Planned? Could it be possible that every gesture, every word, every lie had been carefully orchestrated? The thought made my chest tighten. We began piecing together a timeline. Emails I had missed, messages I had overlooked, the subtle shifts in behavior that I had dismissed. Slowly, the picture became clearer, and the depth of the betrayal started to reveal itself. Maya hadn't just betrayed me emotionally, she had manipulated me. Every time I had trusted her, every promise she had made had been part of a strategy I hadn't even noticed. And my father, he wasn't just complicit. He had guided her actions, ensuring I remained oblivious until the perfect moment. I felt my hands clench into fists. Rage, mixed with heartbreak, in a way I had never experienced. This was no ordinary betrayal. This was something calculated, deliberate, and cruel. Sana's voice broke through my thoughts. "Arav, listen. We need evidence. We need to understand the full extent of what they've done. Only then can you decide your next step." I nodded, determination hardening inside me. I had allowed myself to be blind, to be betrayed, but that would end. I would uncover everything, no matter how deep the lies ran. Over the next few days, we worked meticulously. We checked records, retraced their steps, compared messages, and followed patterns. Each revelation was worse than the last. Secret meetings, coded messages, subtle manipulations that had shaped my life without my knowledge. By the end of the week, the truth was undeniable. Maya and my father had conspired not just in secrecy, but with precision. Their plan had been to control me, to isolate me emotionally, and to benefit in ways I still didn't fully understand. I remember sitting alone that night, the city lights casting long shadows across my apartment. I felt a mix of fury and sorrow, but also something new, clarity. I understood now that this betrayal was more than personal, it was a puzzle, and every puzzle has a solution. I didn't know yet what that solution would be, but I knew this. I wouldn't let them walk away unscathed. I would act, and I would act carefully. And somewhere deep inside, a cold resolve began to form. They had underestimated me. They had thought their betrayal would destroy me, but they hadn't accounted for one thing. I was still standing. The days after uncovering the truth were a blur of anger, hurt, and sleepless nights. But amid the chaos of emotions, one thought kept me awake. I needed a plan. Not a reckless reaction fueled by rage, but a calculated, precise response that would expose the truth and make them feel the weight of their betrayal. I started by observing every routine, every habit, every casual word exchange between them became data. I needed patterns, proof, anything that would solidify what I already knew. And I had Sana by my side, sharp-eyed and methodical, helping me navigate through the tangled web they had spun. Step 1 was information. I revisited every message, every email, every seemingly innocent phone call. I traced transactions, reviewed photographs, and even checked social media interactions that had seemed trivial at the time. Each detail was a thread, and I needed to weave them into a rope strong enough to pull the entire facade apart. Step 2 was patience. I couldn't confront them impulsively. That would alert them, and they were clever, too clever. Every word, every action had to be timed perfectly. I kept my calm, even when my chest burned with anger and betrayal. I acted normal, played the part of the oblivious fiancé, the dutiful son, all while silently gathering the ammunition I would need. Step 3 was emotional control. It was tempting to lash out, to scream, to let them see my pain. But that would have been weakness. I had to remain unreadable, a shadow moving among them, invisible yet observing everything. My anger became a tool, sharpened and honed into focus rather than chaos. Santa suggested setting traps, subtle ones, small tests that would confirm the depth of their manipulation. I agreed. Every meeting, every casual dinner, became an opportunity to watch and learn, to catch them off guard and gather undeniable proof of their deception. At night, I laid out the strategy like a chessboard. Each move, each countermove, planned with precision. I had to anticipate their reactions, predict their lies, and prepare contingencies. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about justice. I wanted them to understand, finally, the gravity of what they had done. And then came the hardest part, maintaining appearances. Around Maya, I had to be calm, even affectionate at times. Around my father, respectful, measured, patient. It was exhausting, but every smile I faked, every casual conversation I engaged in, was a step closer to the ultimate revelation. I also began documenting everything: screenshots, voice recordings, time-stamps evidence that could not be dismissed. I was careful, meticulous, ensuring nothing could backfire. If they suspected even slightly, it would ruin everything. During this time, my thoughts often drifted back to the scene I would never forget. The laughter, the closeness, the sheer ease with which they had betrayed me. That image became a reminder of why I couldn't fail. Why I wouldn't fail? Senna reminded me gently one evening. This isn't just about making them suffer, Arav. It's about reclaiming your life. Don't let them rob you of your dignity, your peace. Her words struck a chord. Revenge alone wasn't enough. I needed resolution, closure, a way to ensure they could never manipulate me or anyone else again. And so, the plan solidified. Gather undeniable evidence, expose the betrayal publicly, confront them directly, and reclaim my life. Every step measured, every action intentional, every move calculated. By the end of the week, I was ready. The pieces were in place, the chessboard set, and I knew the moment to strike was approaching. The betrayal had been deliberate, but so would be my response. I had transformed my heartbreak into purpose, my anger into strategy. And the people who thought they could destroy me were about to learn the true cost of underestimating me. Everything felt surreal the morning I chose to act. The city moved on, cafes opened, traffic crawled. People argued about trivial things, but for me, the world had narrowed to a single point. The truth laid out on my table, every ugly detail accounted for, every lie catalogued. I had gathered what I needed: emails with timestamps, whispered voice notes, bank transfers, and photographs that painted a picture too clear to deny. Sana sat across from me, her eyes steady. "You sure you want to do this public?" she asked one last time. "Because once you open this, there's no closing it." I looked at the stack of evidence and felt the steel in my chest tighten. If I do it alone, they'll gaslight me. If I do it behind closed doors, it'll be whispered away as family drama. Public is the only way they can't rewrite the story. I didn't say it out loud, but part of the reason was more personal. They owed me humiliation the way they had dished it out. The plan was simple in concept and surgical in execution. We arranged a family brunch under the pretext of celebrating my promotion, a believable reason to gather people I knew would be close to my father, and Maya would almost certainly attend. I invited a few colleagues, a trusted neighbor, and a journalist friend who owed me a favor. Sana would signal when it was time. I'd play the part of the calm, slightly tired man who'd been through a rough week. Then I'd let the evidence do the rest. When I walked into my father's house that morning, rage hummed under my skin, but I kept my face neutral. Rashid greeted me with the same composed smile he always wore, smooth, practiced. Maya appeared in a soft dress, hair pin-styled, the picture of innocence. They hugged me in front of everyone. Their warmth felt performative, like actors settling into a scene. I wanted to pull away, to expose them right then, but I waited. Timing mattered. Brunch was small talk and polite laughter at first. My journalist friend chatted with my colleagues about office politics. My neighbor complimented my tie, while my father told the same old story about the early years. Maya sat opposite me, her expression a fragile mask. She reached across the table once and brushed my hand in an attempt to anchor the performance. I realized, and for a moment, the old memories flared and hurt like a fresh burn. I let it pass. I had rehearsed controlling the flicker of feeling that surfaced when she looked at me like that. Sana gave me the sign 2 fingers, tapping her glass, and it was time. I stood, the room going quiet as the clink of cutlery faded. "Thank you, everyone," I said, voice even. "I asked you here for something else. It's not just about a promotion." I kept my tone low, which made people lean in, curious. I set my tablet on the table and hit play. The first thing that filled the room was Maya's voice, recorded months ago, laughing as she discussed plans to manipulate a situation in my favor, plans that involved steps Rashid would later confirm in writing. Then came another clip, my father's voice, unmistakable, instructing her on how to keep me distracted, how to make decisions look like mine, while he steered outcomes to benefit him financially and socially. The faces around the table shifted from curiosity to shock to confusion. Maya's shoulders stiffened. Rashid's jaw tightened. The journalist's expression hardened into professional interest. This was the point where gossip turned into a story. I watched them struggle for control, for the scripts they'd practiced 100 times. But no script could explain away voices in digital trails. Screenshots of transfers appeared next, payments routed through shell accounts, invoices for property titles altered, messages between Maya and associates coordinating moves to marginalize me from an inheritance and from business interests my father controlled. Each piece landed like a blow. This is fabricated," my father began, flush rising in his cheeks, a practiced defense. But his voice wavered. The audio evidence and timestamps cut clean through rehearsed denials. Maya tried the same route: tears remorse, an appeal to sympathy. "Arav, please, you don't have to do this here." Her voice had the tremor of performance. I let her talk. The hunger in their eyes for my reaction made me colder than I expected. When she stopped, I pulled out the final evidence and email chain that tied everything together. It named accounts, dates, and a third party who had been paid to ensure certain decisions went through at precisely the right moments. The third party would later corroborate everything when pressed. The room smelled faintly of perfume and stale defeat. "You built a life on my trust," I said, quieter than they expected. "You used my love, my faith in our family, to engineer outcomes that benefited you. You manipulated my decisions, and then acted surprised when I didn't do what you wanted." I kept my voice controlled because emotion would have given them leverage to call me unhinged. It was when I displayed the most personal proof that the atmosphere finally cracked for real. Photos of Maya and my father, not merely in compromising moments, but exchanging documents paperwork with my name on it, showed intent. The neighbor who'd been present at one of the supposed family meetings nodded, confirming details I'd unearthed. My journalist friend, sensing the reality in the story, reached for his recorder and asked calm, pointed questions that made it impossible for Rashid to spin. For a frantic moment, Rashid's mask slipped. I saw the man who was terrified not of exposure, but of losing the empire he had built, petty, scrambling, suddenly small. He attempted to bully old reflexes of power, but no one in that room seemed to fear him now. The power had shifted. Maya tried one last thing, to bring pity into the room. She sighed, clasped her hands as if in prayer, and blamed ambition, circumstances, bad choices. "I never wanted to hurt you," she said, as if that could undo years of lies. Her voice had an edge and unguarded arrogance I hadn't seen before. She looked less like a guilty lover and more like someone who had been enjoying the climb. The final blow came when my journalist friend, calm, professional, said he would run a piece if the receipts were real, and that he'd interviewed the contact who'd confirmed the wire transfers. People in the room looked at one another, eyes wide. The idea of a public article, of legal scrutiny, of banks and records being examined was a threat that carried weight. Rashid's polite veneer transformed into fury. He stood abruptly, knocking his chair back. "This is family business," he snapped. "You have no right to humiliate us like this." His hand shook, whether from anger or fear. I couldn't tell. "You made it family business," I replied. "When deception is used to steal a life from someone you claim to love, it stops being private. This is my life." There was shouting, then heated words, half-exposed threats. But I remained steady, the calm center of the storm I'd chosen to create. Sana stood up and walked to my side. "We called a lawyer," she said. "We'll freeze accounts if necessary. We'll protect what's rightfully his." Her voice was a promise and a blade. As people began to leave, some in disbelief, others whispering like vultures, the most unexpected reaction came from my father. He met my gaze, and for a second there was no armor left. "Arav," he said, voice small and raw, "I did it to protect our family." Those 3 words, meant to justify, landed like an accusation against him more than a plea. "Protecting a family doesn't mean destroying one of its members," I answered. My throat felt raw, but my words were steady. "You used my love and my trust as currency. There's no protection in that. There's theft." The room emptied. Maya left with her head high, no apology worth its name. Rashid retreated to his study, the door clicking shut behind him like a verdict. I sat back down, the weight of what I had done settling into my bones. Victory tasted hollow. I had exposed them, but exposure didn't erase the hurt. Outside, cars moved as if nothing had happened. Inside, the house felt like a hollowed shell. I had forced truth into daylight, but truth carried consequences: legal battles, family fractures, public shame. Justice would take its course now, slow and procedural. Revenge had been served in public, but the cost was only beginning to reveal itself. As I left the house, I looked at the sky clouds gathering, an oddly appropriate backdrop. I wasn't healed. Far from it. The confrontation had not given me closure, it had only shifted the battlefield. I felt the first real tremor of what would come next, fallout that would test not only their lies, but my endurance. The days after the confrontation felt like I was living in a suspended world, one where every glance and every conversation carried a hidden weight. News of what had happened at the brunch spread faster than I could have imagined. Friends, neighbors, colleagues, everyone knew, or at least thought they knew. Whispers followed me down streets and corridors, some sympathetic, others judging. The exposure had released a storm, and I was standing right in its center. Maya disappeared from my life almost immediately. She stopped answering calls and texts, but I could feel her presence everywhere in social media, in mutual contacts, in the way people whispered around me. She had been the center of my life, and suddenly she was erased, leaving a void I wasn't sure I could fill. Rashid retreated into silence. He stopped calling, stopped visiting, and for the first time I saw him not as the untouchable, controlling figure I had feared, but as a man exposed, cornered by his own actions. There were conversations behind closed doors, lawyers and warnings, but they couldn't undo the humiliation, the undeniable proof that he had manipulated the one person he claimed to love most, me. Yet the legal battles were slow and draining. Even with all the evidence I had collected, the process of reclaiming what had been stolen, be it property, finances, or reputation, took months. There were threats, subtle attempts to discredit me, and moments where I felt like giving up, but I kept going. The rage that had driven my planning now powered my persistence. I would not allow them to rewrite the story again. Amid the chaos, I discovered unexpected support. Sana was unwavering, her presence a constant anchor. Friends I hadn't realized were paying attention reached out quietly, offering assistance or simply listening. Some relatives I had assumed would take Rashid's side were shocked by the revelations and distanced themselves. It was a strange comfort to know that, while betrayal can destroy, truth can also forge new alliances. Emotionally, the aftermath was more complicated than I anticipated. Part of me wanted to feel relief, to experience closure, but the reality was messy. I mourned the life I had imagined with Maya, the plans, the dreams, the trust, and it hit me that some losses couldn't be undone. At the same time, there was a subtle satisfaction in seeing the facade crumble. The people who had deceived me confronted with their own duplicity. Publicly, the exposure had consequences. Mutual acquaintances treated me differently, some with respect, others with caution. There were whispers about who I could trust, speculation about my family, and the inevitable scrutiny that comes when private betrayal is made public. Every encounter carried the echoes of the confrontation, but gradually, the initial shock began to settle. Rashid tried to regain control, attempting manipulation and subtle intimidation. But each move he made only confirmed what I already knew. Power without integrity is fragile, and his position had been irreversibly weakened. Maya's absence from the public eye became a quiet reminder of consequences. how a life built on deception can collapse almost overnight. During this period, I focused on rebuilding myself, my routines, my work, my friendships. I immersed myself in the tangible, in the things I could control. The betrayal had taught me hard lessons about trust, discernment, and self-reliance. I learned to read between lines, to sense duplicity early, and to guard my life and heart without becoming cold or cynical.